Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining Propflo's Green Homes webinar series for mortgage advisors, finance and property professionals to understand more about energy efficiency and green finance. I'm Pam Barbato, founder of Action Net Zero. We're a community interest company. Our purpose is to help accelerate sustainable change, and our mission is to empower communities, people and businesses to take affordable actions to tackle the climate and ecological crisis. I'm delighted to be facilitating today's webinar, joined by our expert panel who we'll introduce shortly. In today's session, we'll be exploring why brokers are vital in helping customers go green. What is the role of brokers and what are the benefits to them? We'll also be looking at the motivations for customers to retrofit and look at the green finance market and why transitioning to low carbon homes is important for lenders. So lots to get through. So on to the programme for today. It's an absolute pleasure to now invite our expert panellists. So we've got Luke Loveridge, founder and CEO of Propflo, Rachel Buxton, Sustainability Housing Development Manager at Lloyds Banking Group, Will Rind, VP of Mortgage Advice and Growth at Habito, and Rachel Hunnisett, Associate Director, Built Environment at the Green Finance Institute. As I'm sure you'll all agree, an esteemed panel of experts for our discussion today, wealth of expertise, and I'm really looking forward to diving into some of the videos that we've got to landscape our session today. So firstly, Luke will be sharing his insights on why energy efficiency is important, especially to brokers and customers. So now to show Luke's video.
Hello, I'm Luke, the founder and CEO of Propflo. In this presentation, I'll be briefly covering some of the key reasons why we should be retrofitting our properties to make them more energy efficient from a national, individual homeowner and mortgage broker perspective. So firstly, what are some of the global and national drivers? In the UK, a report by LSE predicted that the cost of climate change will increase from 1.1% of GDP to 3.3% by 2050 and 7.4% by the end of the century. That's an increase of £157 billion per year. Global events have also shown that the UK energy supply is vulnerable. So in 2022, the UK imported energy worth £117 billion, and even in a normal year, we're importing nearly £50 billion worth of energy. There's also an interrelationship between energy efficiency and our health. According to the BRE, cold homes alone cost the NHS £540 million per year. And there's also increasing concern over overheating in summer and poor indoor air quality. But why should homeowners care? Well, the most obvious benefit is direct energy savings. So a small solar PV system and battery creates benefits of nearly £16,000 over their lifetime at a cost of around £7,500 to £8,000. But energy efficiency also affects the thermal comfort of a property, the indoor air quality, and the financial stability. So is the property warm in winter and cool in the summer? Is it suitably ventilated? And how exposed does it make you to future energy price increases? Those will be questions that future homeowners and buyers will be asking more frequently. We've also estimated that energy efficiency properties could benefit from nearly £3,000 of mortgage lender incentives, but there are also lenders encouraging energy efficiency through increased affordability and also more flexible lending criteria. According to RICS, there's also a green premium of up to 15% and potentially a brown discount applying to inefficient homes in the longer term. But what does this look like in reality? So here's a real life example of two identical homes that were put up on the market in 2023. One had solar, one didn't. The property that was sold a few months after the property with no solar panels had a premium on it of £15,000 or 2.4%. So the market is starting to price these improvements into their valuations, but obviously it will be key factors will include the seller circumstances, the skill of the agent, and also the market conditions at the time. And just briefly touch on landlord incentives over and above what I've just explained. There are still some tax incentives. Some might be limited and some might be more longer term, but they are there, and also compliance. So what's the scale of the challenge? So approximately 250 billion is needed to retrofit all UK homes. For mortgage properties, that's about 90 billion to get 6.2 million homes up to a C. But there's also opportunities in the on-mortgage market as well. So, for example, through equity release. So why should brokers care? So firstly, there is increase in demand. Solar has increased nearly 700% over the last few years, and heat pumps are increasing as well. It could differentiate you and help you increase retention by considering customer needs more holistically and getting them the best deals for their long-term needs. And there's also a huge financial and growth opportunity. So improvement suppliers typically have direct marketing costs, which they add to their costs, to their prices, but that can actually be passed on to mortgage brokers that help facilitate those transactions. So individually per home, a broker could get maybe £700 plus per property. Thank you for listening, and I hope you found the presentation interesting.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Luke. So thinking about the insights that you gave, I think one of the biggest takeouts for me was the scale of the economic opportunities in greening our homes from a UK perspective, right through to those key motivations from homeowners. So just to recap on a few of those points. We heard how costs will increase from 1.1% of GDP to 3.3 by 2050, and then rising again to 7.4 by the year 2100. This actually really sets the scene for why it's so critical that we accelerate right now and do everything that we can to transition to that low carbon economy. The second piece was around addressing the security of supply. We all know from the cost of living crisis how critical it's been. We're importing a staggering £50 billion a year of energy, which really focuses the mind on the economic case in terms of putting our own generation of renewable energy at home and really driving that agenda. The idea of democratizing energy for our consumers, i.e. enabling them to be able to manage their costs, I think is a really compelling point. And then finally, we had some really interesting payback figures, which I know we get a lot of comments about, how long solar PV, for instance, takes to pay back. £15,000 against a cost of $7,500 to $8,000 was cited in Luke's video. So really unpicking some of those true costs and understanding the real motivations around that cost piece is critical. So this leads on to thinking, actually, so what does that mean for brokers? It'd be really great to kick off the panel with some thoughts on why brokers are so crucial. Actually, moving on to first person. Will, would you like to respond to that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Brokers, they're the real heroes. Let's be honest. They've dealt with everything from pandemics, previous prime ministers, we won't mention who, to rate pools, which we've seen quite a lot. And it's been one hell of a ride over the last few years. And plus, now they're stepping up to save the planet. Now, around 17 to 21% of the UK's carbon emissions, depending on where you look, comes from homes. And by helping people improve their energy efficiency, brokers not only save the money, but also contribute to a much greener world. And it's all about adding value, showcasing why there's a good business case to make properties more energy efficient. Increased value leads to greater loyalty, leads to an increase in referrals. Take my dad, for example. He is constantly talking about how great his solar panels are and how much he's saving or earning each month. And ultimately, if people are talking about it, it leads to an increase in business
how I think you get involved when...
Sorry, Pam, I hope you guys can hear me. But the last thing I'll say is that the focus on improving energy efficiency of properties is just not going away. And rightly so. Being on the front foot is going to set you apart from your competitors, and being a subject matter expert in retrofitting, green mortgages, and the options available, it's only going to benefit you and your customers, and it's good for the planet.
Great. Rachel, would you like to pick up?
Yeah, so I really agree with Will on those points about adding value. So it's about, for me, deepening customer relationships that are going to benefit brokers and help diversify their income stream. At some point, we need to get to net zero, and to do that, the housing stock needs to improve, and that could be energy costs or regulation that are the lever to do that. And we're taking it really seriously in Lloyds Banking Group. So those brokers who are the early adopters will benefit from being ready and able to cater to customers' changing needs and behaviour, and they'll be able to offer the right education and advice to the customers. if I think back to when I was a first-time buyer, so I was a first-time buyer at 24 with a 25-year term. That was the norm then. That's not the norm now. So now, perhaps, I mean, I don't know the exact figures, but we're perhaps talking a first-time buyer, early 30s with a 30, 40-year term. So customers change, as do their behaviours. So, and what we're finding is that today's first-time buyers are a lot more sustainably conscious than what previous, perhaps, first-time buyers were. And they're already starting to expect more sustainable measures in property. So particularly like new build, they expect PV and car chargers to already be installed. So brokers do need to be ready for the sustainable conscious customers today, or I think they'll lose business. And I think that's where we can look at like the piece Blockbuster Netflix story. We all know what happened there, and Blockbuster went from being a retail force to a nostalgic memory, and that's because they didn't adapt to customer behaviour.
Brilliant, thanks Rachel, that's brilliant. In terms of Luke, would you like to come in there, or Rach?
Yeah, so I don't know if you heard it on the presentation, but what is it in it for mortgage brokers? And I think at the moment, actually not much, but there are incentives potentially from suppliers. So brokers could potentially be earning up to £700 plus in commission by helping to facilitate some of these transactions. So I do think it is a growth area, and I don't think many brokers realise the potential of how they could actually get involved and help people to retrofit, and how crucial they are in the process. Because whether it's remortgaging or buying a new property, they are at a crucial point of a trigger for retrofitting and making energy efficient improvements. So I think once there's more awareness for brokers and support for brokers around the benefits and the opportunities, I think we'll start seeing quite a shift.
Brilliant, thanks Luke.
I'll just add in on that. I really liked Will's point about brokers saving the planet, and maybe a nice cartoon to add to some of the promotional material that we've got around on the green mortgages subject at the moment. I have all kinds of ideas. So I want to talk a little bit about why intermediaries are so important to the market, as opposed to why it's so important to brokers. In the UK, 84% of all mortgages are intermediated. When I started giving advice 10 years ago, that was 75%. So we've really seen that kind of uptick, and the trajectory is upwards. I think IMLA have predicted that getting to about 90% over the next few years. So we're beginning to see that trajectory really take force. And that's really unusual and unique to the UK. So if you compare us with Spain, for example, the market in Spain is 20% intermediated. So the models that are used to roll out products across the intermediary market are very different. UK and Canada are probably very similar in types of the way that they work globally. So that's why engaging intermediaries is so important. And that's why we see a lot more education and support in the UK than we have seen it when you compare us to our European cousins. But actually what's really important from the research and the conversations that we've had with intermediaries is that you need to feel confident talking about something, right? So if you're going to talk to your clients about it, what exactly are you going to say? And if they've got questions, how do you answer them? And that's why we see things like pensions, for example, not get often talked about as part of the fact find process. Apologies to everyone who talks about it in great depth, because I'm sure there are those out there. Because if it's not your area of specialism, you kind of shy away from it. And for me, the defining thing here is understanding when we're talking about green, we're not talking about having to become a construction expert. Thankfully, we've got plenty of people across the sector that can do that, and people that are really well qualified in that. It's about becoming an expert in the finance, and that's what's critical about this, and that's what's so important for intermediaries.
But I will move now on actually to back to you, Rach. So we've got a video that's going to play. So it's just to say, so Rachel's presentation is going to be looking at the finance market and actually looking at Green Finance Institute's landscaping, how that market currently looks. So hopefully no technical issues. Over to Rach.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Honeysett, Associate Director for Built Environment at the Green Finance Institute. At the GFI, we are an independent, non-for-profit organisation with a mission, and our mission is to accelerate the transition to a clean, resilient and environmentally sustainable economy by channeling capital at pace and scale towards real economy outcomes that will create jobs and increase prosperity for all. One of the flagship campaigns within the Built Environment programme is the Green Mortgage Campaign, and I quite often get asked, what exactly is a green mortgage and what is their role in the broader UK mortgage landscape? The UK have signed a legally binding agreement to achieve net zero by 2050. UK housing contributes a significant proportion of our carbon emissions, and in order to realise an improvement in the emissions from UK homes, significant investment is required. This investment in upgrading homes will most likely come from a wide range of sources. However, experts do unanimously agree that the public purse won't be able to meet the funding gap alone. We simply cannot rely on government money alone to improve our leaky housing stock. Mortgage finance is already widely used when it comes to homeowners making improvements to their properties. Think of a new kitchen or a single-storey extension, for example. Additional borrowing with the customer's existing lender or a remortgage with capital raising are pretty run-of-the-mill transactions for mortgage brokers, which I'm sure all of you on the line have had experience with at some point in your career. You don't necessarily need a tag or a specific product for these transactions, and the same in theory is true for green home improvements. However, there are advantages to the market of tagging loans for green purposes. For example, they provide clearer line of sight over assets on a lender's book and can also provide some added features for customers. Green mortgage products are still in their very early stages across the market. And the thing to remember here is that while 5 to 10 basis point discounts or cashback products may seem quite distant from the not insignificant task of decarbonising the UK's 29 million homes, these provide essential insight into the direction of travel for the sector. Lenders are using this data to feed in insight to wider propositional innovation, which will play a leading role in supporting customers by doing what the mortgage industry does so incredibly well, connecting customers with access to finance when they need it to buy their first home, move into that dream home, upsize, downsize, or in this case, when we talk about green finance, ensure their homes are thermally efficient, comfortable homes which will serve them now and long into the future. Something I get asked about a lot is by mortgage brokers and distributors is how do brokers go about discussing green and sustainable options with their clients? There are clearly some defining guardrails around what constitutes regulated financial advice and what is within the wheelhouse of others, such as an architect, a surveyor, or the wider construction industry. Having a deep understanding of how the UK's net zero target impacts mortgage brokers and their businesses and their clients is fundamental for both making the most of the opportunity and minimising the risk that sits alongside that. Therefore, I'm delighted to share that at the Green Finance Institute we will soon be launching our broker training certificate, something we've been working on for 8 months, a carefully curated collection of expertise and practical support in navigating the green finance sector. This drills down on climate change, its specific impact in the UK, what this means for housing and more specifically mortgage brokers. Follow me or the Green Finance Institute on LinkedIn to make sure you're kept up to date with the UK launch. The green mortgage market represents a significant opportunity for growth within the mortgage sector, as well as for the industry to respond to the shifting needs of customers now and into the future as we together move towards net zero. Thank you very much for listening.
Brilliant. You did brilliantly, Rach. Thank you so much. And actually, thinking about that, one, how exciting to hear about the launch of the Green Finance, your Green Broker Certificate. Really looking forward. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about it in the Q&A. But one thing that we do want to really talk about is actually the understanding whether or not the what green mortgages are available, and actually are they effective at the moment in incentivising homeowners to act. You know, it's a critical piece, isn't it? We need to make sure that incentivisation is getting through to those end customers. So, Will, I understand that at Habito you have been doing some work on this yourself, and that you're able to give us an update. So would be great for you to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a bit of a build on what Rachel said, really. But green mortgages, what are they? Ultimately, they're about making energy efficient properties more enticing with perks like cashback and all better rates. And some lenders even offer incentives for home improvements like upgrading windows or solar panels, heat pumps, that type of thing. And I do think there is still space for further innovation in this space. But if you look at what we've got now in comparison to what we had, even a few months back, a few years back, there's way more than what there was. So let me give you a few examples. So there are a few lenders that will offer more borrowing to customers if they're buying an energy efficient home. And this is largely due to the reduction in the property's running costs. So Leeds Building Society, on average, lend an additional 11k more. And in some cases, they've lent up to 23,000 more. And Accord recently announced this, they can lend an additional 13k on new build homes. Other lenders, they'll give cash back and or a discount on the rate for buying a new build or energy efficient property. And this typically ranges between £250 to £500. There are some lenders that offer cash back and again, a discounted rate for retrofitting a property. So Kensington spring to mind, they have something called the Green Cashback Mortgage. Great name, by the way. It pays £1,000 for improving the property's energy efficient to the next banding or the rating by at least 10 standard assessment procedure, so SAP points. Nationwide, offering 0% interest borrowing up to 15k, no product fees. Coops, they can give a £2,000 or up to a £2,000 discount on the arrangement fee if the property is improved to above a C within 24 months. And then Saffron, this is within 6 months if it's improved, the EPC is improved, then they'll reduce the rate by 10 bips, and that's for the remaining term of that fixed product. So free, cheap money, it's a great thing, right? But are these products really hitting the mark? Not really, in my opinion. That being said, it's great to see the likes of Leeds, Accord, recognising that these properties are cheaper to run, so they're able to lend more. And it's great to see some lenders coming into the retrofit space. But, you know, if a customer were to improve the value of the property, that is going to be beneficial for a lender's backbook. And it's not all about lenders, by the way. But if it puts them into a lower loan to value banding, why can't they switch on to that deal with no early repayment charges? Why aren't all lenders offering more borrowing if the property is cheaper to run? Food for thought.
Brilliant, great point, Will. And actually linking nicely, and Rachel, would be really good to hear from you.
So it all sounds like really good and it sounds simple, but from a lender point of view, it is more complicated in terms of propositions. So at Lloyds Banking Group, we were the first to bring EPC data capture into the application in April last year. And we're now in a position where we're starting to use that data. And we're really now looking at how we can use that data to innovate so that we can actually look at the right proposition to bring to market. I think EPC linked affordability is the immediate answer that I think most brokers are thinking about, but we're carefully considering the right options for us before we make any decisions. And it is a case of a lot of the products that are there at the minute are for new business. And I think the big gap at the moment is on retrofit and the refinance space for fads and remos. And that's essential for delivering goals that we've got for getting to net zero. And I think it's more challenging for lenders as a whole. So we all need to get better and really drive innovation in this space, because we need to be able to create that demand so that customers want to do the sustainable home improvements and be rewarded for doing so.
Brilliant, absolutely, Rachel. Luke, actually, would you like to make a few comments?
Yeah, I think the panel has said quite a bit around some of the innovation, some of the gaps already, so I won't repeat that. I suppose just picking up on what Rachel just said around demand, I think that is actually crucial because, and also what Rach said around, this isn't, a bit non-business as usual. People do home improvements to their property and there's financing around that already. So really, I think it's about, two things around the awareness for consumers and also brokers, and then getting those people at the right time. And I think that's where brokers do come in, and they can get them at sort of key trigger points, and also just more awareness of the benefits as well. So I think it's been raised already around sort of health and well-being. So for ourselves, we do a rating around resilience. So we measure thermal comfort, indoor air quality, so the impact on indoor air quality on your health, and also financial stability. So when you start to move away from just energy efficiency and environment, so people care about climate change and carbon, but we did a survey about 1,000 people, homeowners, and they weren't willing to part with any money to save carbon, but they were for energy efficiency. But as those energy bills start to come down, maybe it starts to drop off the priority list. So we do need to expand the considerations. If you buy a kitchen, install a new kitchen, you might do a bit of a quick calculation on added value to the property, but you really want to get that kitchen for the enjoyment of it. So I think we do need to start making those connections and raising awareness of that as well.
Yeah, really good point about obviously that thermal piece as well, as you're saying, across the house and comfort levels. In terms of moving on, we were going to be hearing from Rachel on a video.
Lloyds Banking Group is the largest mortgage provider with 1 in 5 UK mortgages. We bear significant responsibility in financing the transition to a low carbon economy. Within our strategy to green the built environment, we have committed to reduce the carbon emissions we finance by more than 50% by 2030 on the path to net zero by 2050. Decarbonising our homes that account for 16% of the total UK emissions is critical to achieving net zero. The scale of the challenge is clear. Of the 29 million residential homes, 26 million are Lloyds Banking Group customers and 17 million are lower than an EPCC. Brokers are vital in this journey. Market data suggests approximately 85% of mortgage acquisition is via the intermediary channel, which shows how brokers have scalable relationships with customers to accelerate the decarbonisation of the housing stock. Encouragingly, there is growing awareness amongst homeowners and landlords about the need to undertake retrofit work to improve energy efficiency and switch to a low carbon heat source. Lenders have a clear and vital role in helping to accelerate progress on retrofit. Our own research found that 68% of homeowners and 87% of landlords want some form of support from their bank or mortgage provider to retrofit their home. Retrofitting Europe's oldest housing stock is essential in reaching the UK's net zero goals, but as well as focusing on improving our existing stock, we're also actively addressing the urgent need for new, high quality and sustainable homes in the UK. We have committed to 10 billion in green mortgages by the end of 2024. We have developed a range of educational resources and financial incentives to help tackle the retrofit challenge. Many of our customers, especially those living in older and poorly insulated homes, of which the UK average is a D, are grappling with high energy costs and a substantial carbon footprint, and they're not clear on where to start their retrofit journey. Beyond education and awareness, we also offer a number of financial incentives to support with retrofit work, including cashback offers and partnerships with trusted industry leaders that can make it easier for customers to install sustainable home improvements such as heat pumps and solar panels. There is also emerging evidence from Rightmove on the impact of property values and an efficiency premium. A property moving from a D to a C could attract an increase of 3% or an average of £11,000. Our partnerships highlight the power of working across sectors and industry to help accelerate the UK's progress towards net zero. There is a crucial role for lenders to play in increasing awareness and understanding of the homes retrofit challenge and providing the right incentives and financial support for customers, whilst also working with our broker partners on new propositions and innovations to help accelerate the drive towards net zero.
Thanks, Rachel. Really great insight in terms of how you're supporting that. And I think one of those key questions before we go to the live Q&A is actually to ask the panel more broadly about, tell us a little bit more about exactly how those incentivisations are able to help those customers across those different housing stocks in particular. So, Will, to ask you, actually, is enough happening? Do you feel that the incentivisation levels are right for the market?
No, is the short answer. Brokers aren't really incentivised. Now, this does build a bit on what Luke said, that there is some incentives there, but currently brokers aren't really incentivised. And if anything, and I really don't want this to come across negatively, but green mortgages, they've added a layer of complexity to a broker, having to establish the property's EPC rating. And like I said previously, these deals are either cheap or they have cashback, so they appear slightly higher up in the sourcing tables. So a broker needs to find that out to establish which customer which deals the customer is eligible for. And retrofitting properties is going to improve the property value, relatively speaking, and in turn it will reduce the running costs, and this will result in a lower risk mortgage book for the lender. So a little bit of a cheeky request, but could we see an increased prop fee for helping customers finance via retrofit? And we've seen government grants for consumers. Could we see the same thing for brokers to help them invest in green tech?
Really great points. Rach, would you like to come in on that one?
Yes, just going to applaud Will then as being one of every time you speak to a broker, they're like, "Oh, proc fees, that'd be lovely." How about so yes, and also worth noting that lenders are currently funding a lot of their green mortgage book through margin compression, so they're the biggest loss leaders on their book, and that's a challenge that needs addressing. I could talk to you for a solid hour about margin compression and reasons that lenders need support in order to reduce it being a loss leader on their book, because otherwise the market just simply won't scale. But around the topic of incentivising brokers, it's potentially quite an unusual thing for me to say, but I think the question should be, should we be incentivising brokers? My rule really, my thoughts on this are that finance is an enabler. It's always been an enabler. It's never been a driver, or rarely a driver. There are occasions. If you look at economics more broadly, people don't walk into an estate agent and say, "I've seen this really fantastic Lloyds Banking Group mortgage advertised. I'd like to buy a house, please." It's not how it works. They go, "I'd like to buy a house. That's the thing I want now. How do I finance it?" And that's the role of the broker. So my belief is that what we need to do is that brokers don't necessarily, this is not the job of the broker to go and champion green and, I will only do your mortgage if you get a heat pump. That would be an awful outcome, although it keep Luke terribly busy, I'm sure. What instead we need is some long-term policy certainty from the government. We need a mixture of carrots and sticks, for want of better phrases, in terms of legislation that support customers to decarbonise, give them a long-term roadmap on the benefits of that. They understand the academic side. I think we overbake the academic side of retrofitting quite a bit. We all work in finance, so we all talk about the return on investment or the payback period. And actually what people want is warm homes that are nice to people. You don't go into your friends and see their lovely new Wren kitchen and say, "Oh, this is fantastic. How many meals do you have to cook before you've paid it back?" You talk about how wonderful it is that you've now got a kitchen island you can talk around with your friends, and you talk about your this is other industries are really, really good at this. You'll see adverts of people gathering, looking so much happier now they've got their lovely kitchen island. Their life has been transformed. But it's not understating that to talk about green and sustainability, right? If you have a home that's damp and mouldy, you're so much more likely to get health issues. The NHS are currently dealing with huge amounts of illness based on thermal efficiency of property. In the UK every year, we see 5,000 cold-related deaths and 2,000 heat-related deaths per year that are directly attributed to insulation in homes. It isn't something that's just nice to have and might chuck a bit of value on the house. But my belief is that it isn't the finance sector's job, from brokers, banks, et al., to drive that. That is something that will come from other driving factors. What we need to do is be really, really good enablers of that and make sure that we are absolute experts in delivering the finance at the times in life when our customers need it.
Brilliant, thanks Rach. That's a really good end before we start opening up to our live Q&A. So please, listeners, do let us know what you'd like us to answer. There's one question that's come in, which is a great one to kick off with. So the first question is, what tools are available to brokers and customers to help retrofit properties? Will, would you like to take this one?
Yeah, I'd love to. So you may have seen on LinkedIn fairly recently that Habito and Propflo have recently partnered. And a partnership we're super excited
Looks
about,
like we've lost
helping
Will for a little
customers
bit.
make their homes greener.
Okay.
And what Habito and indeed their customers will be doing is using Propflo's Green Val tool to guide them through the retrofit process. From a business case, selecting improvements, getting direct quotes and managing the works in one place. And Habito are there to help facilitate the finance of that. And we have spoken a bit about this, but most people are aware of the benefits of making their home greener, but don't currently act. And this is, yes, the cost involved, but I feel it's because they don't really know where to start. And having a tool that provides a comprehensive business case that we spoke about, benefits, cost, the resilience rating, factors in thermal comfort, air quality, financial stability, the ability to then get direct quotes, explore DIY options, and a brokerage can help finance the project. It's, in my opinion, a major step in one of the most important global challenges.
Brilliant. Luke, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, just to add to what Will was saying, I think it's key that brokers don't need to be retrofit experts, and actually as much of the legwork should be done by these tools to help inform and sort of convince people around the business case and the benefits of retrofitting prior to them even like looking to remortgage. So, I think Habito's doing some great work in terms of how they automate that, how they at certain touch points and certain trigger points, engaging people at the right time with the right tools and the right information. So I think they're really leading on this at the moment. And again, obviously Propflo is one tool. There are other tools out there. We've specialised on really focus on as few clicks as possible and being sort of wider considerations as well.
Brilliant, thanks, Luke. Actually, on that point, we've had a great question that says, how can private landlords be incentivised to undertake energy improvements through new green remortgaging products? Who would like to take that one?
I mean, I can jump in. So obviously, there is the way the wind is blowing. The minimum energy efficiency standards, the new ones have been scrapped. Or if you listen to Labour, they're looking to bring it back in if they get in. But I think whatever government is after the next election, they will have to address that. So there will be some regulation and maybe incentives at some point for landlords. So there will be some sort of compliance aspect down the line. But how do we encourage landlords right now? And I think a key piece is around split incentives. So a lot of landlords might be, well, my tenants are getting the energy savings, why should I invest? And I think it's about changing the mindset from sort of ROI within 5 years, or tenants getting energy savings, to actually a net present value. So what is the total benefits for doing these works, and then how you realise that it could be from increase in property value, it could be from energy savings, and maybe the landlords increases the rent slightly. So I think we just need to change that mentality. And again, so I think it's key around just making sure that we create that awareness. And then also, I think from the lender perspective, if we can, and again, this might be regulatory, but if they can potentially have higher LTV, I think that will start to really shift it for landlords as well. And obviously, the traditional sort of green mortgages, discounts, etc., that could start to really impact their profit margins as well. So, that's my 2 pennies.
Rachel, would you like to come in?
Yes, please. So I think we've just launched the BM Landlord Retrofit Tour, and as part of that, we've actually done some events direct to a landlord audience. And I think what's been clear is that there is a different mindset between landlords and actual owner-occupiers in the resi space. And there's a general feeling from the landlords we were speaking to as how they wanted to incorporate works that they were doing into their normal maintenance plan. So it didn't feel as much as a task as what it does for someone in the owner-occupier space. They welcomed that they could have a plan going forward as to when they updated a kitchen or did the bathroom, that they could then work on that particular aspect at that time. So what we saw is that they really welcomed actually making these changes. And they weren't so much focused on the piece around, it's going to cost you this much and this is the payback. They were invested in that they were making these changes in the property anyway, and more around, the health, damp and mould and all those sorts of aspects that I really saw a different mindset, which was really encouraging.
Actually, it's great to hear that, Rachel. We've got one of our listeners has come up with, surely the incentive is protecting the planet, something that needs to be important for all of us, recognition and promotion of the benefits and the help with that. And I think, as we said, those levers for change, the motivations of different individuals is on a spectrum, isn't it? From one end on the cost right through to the green. And I think it's being really cognizant of that. So as you were saying, it's understanding where those motivational points are. But would anybody else like to answer any comments around that piece in terms of shifting the dial around the necessity for green, but understanding how the recognition and promotion of the benefits will help with that?
Yeah, I don't mind adding in. To echo Luke's point, I think he said really well around the landlord piece was you will see lots of product design which will enable it. I've spoken about incentivisation plenty. I just wanted to add in something on the tools as well, and I'll come back to the incentivisation piece. There's a Green Mortgage Advice website which is run by the Association of Mortgage Intermediaries and the Mortgage Climate Action Group. which is worth checking out if you're a broker working in the space. On our website, we have the Green Mortgage Hub, and we also have the Brokers Handbook, which was designed specifically to support brokers in discussions about green and sustainability. So I just wanted to chop in on that point as well. Sorry, Pam, totally breaking all the rules. I've got the mic, so I'm just going to take advantage of it. Around that incentivization, absolutely. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the incentive was of saving the planet was enough to win hearts and minds of everyone? I think you're in really good company on this call of people that really bought into that. But let's be honest, we're still getting people struggling to use their recycling bins. That's the state of the world we live in, and we have to make sure that we are promoting and educating around green and sustainable upgrades and decarbonisation of the built environment, domestic property included, appealing to the things that motivate people, right? So whether that is your house is going to go up in value, whether that is, and there's another comment on there about data. Luke's got loads, so that's a good question for Luke. But Rightmove also published a report July last year, which shows some of the early data around that. Some people it'll be a fiscal thing. Some people it'll be I get to show off to my neighbours because I've got better solar panels than them. Some people will want Beyonce advertising them. It's different things drive different people. This is about us understanding that and doing some real kind of strong analysis in the market to go, okay, how can we best support our customers as they transition, which we have to do, but how can we do that without it being too onerous on the consumer?
Brilliant, thanks, Rach. And leading into that question, which is how do we get the data about the green value premium through to the valuers and their customers? Will, did you want to pick up on that one?
Yeah, I'm also looking a little bit at Luke as well on this around the actual level of
actually, Luke, do you want to
data
dive in?
and the access.
I can take it. So,
I will share, assuming you can
getting
still
the
hear
data
me, some challenges that we have worked with Propflo on all of our mortgages that we've done and all of our completions, and it was really interesting, and it's something that I feel that we've mentioned it a little bit. It's not just on brokers, it's not just on lenders, it's everyone collaborating together. But if we can provide that information over to lenders, then they've got clear visibility of their mortgage book. We can provide that to customers and be really specific about what we're telling customers, what energy improvement will get their property to an EPC C or above. The Propflo tool, and there are other similar tools out there, but that is what that tool is designed to do, to really show that business case to the customer, not just the cost involved. But I think it is a very important point to the valuers as well, and I haven't really got an answer for that. Perhaps Rachel, that's something you could jump in, not to throw you under a bus, but how can we get that over to the valuers?
Totally valid point. I think there is a paper due out by RICS in terms of like the sustainable green features, but it's definitely a piece that we're thinking about within Lloyds, and particularly in the new build sector as well, because you only need to think about if there's more remote valuations happening, and if we're not informed, well, if the valuer is not informed up front about the sustainable features of the property, if it be solar, like the batteries, EV charging, heat pumps, they're not going to know to value it in. So there's a big communication piece across the industry as well to bring us all together and in line.
Yeah, could I just jump in there as well? So I think there's been a lot of publications around increase in property value, BRE, RICS, Rightmove, they've all done these studies. But what I've found is incorporating automated valuations of the improvement value is quite difficult, because a lot of the time people might be doing other renovation works and then putting solar panels or new windows on at the same time. So it's quite hard to disaggregate what actually drove the price increase in the market. So that's why we do highlight those reports around indicative increases in property value, but we just put it as a net present value of the energy savings, the increase in property value, whatever you want to that to be. We just stick to that figure because obviously if you the price of the property will vary depending on the skill of the agent, the market at the time, and also the circumstances of the seller. If a seller's desperate to sell, the property price could go a lot lower than what they were expecting, right? So So really, that's why we have valuation, and it is open up a can of worms. But I think if we just, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy to some extent. If people are saying, actually, this is a net present value for doing these things, we know that figure, then how that's then incorporated into the market, it should, in a working market, that will then be incorporated. But then depending on other factors, it might be more defending the value compared to another property, for example. On my video, which we can share around at the end, I do actually go through an example of a property close to me, exactly identical properties. One had solar panels, one didn't. One sold at 625 in, I think it was August 2023, and then a couple of months later, the identical one but with solar panels was on the market for 640. So they are starting to incorporate the price increases for sure. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Brilliant. I'd just like to come back. Someone's put a comment in response to the last that actually, yes, it's really important to link those motivations. So it says, I would also like to add that ROI is obviously important to many, but as well as showing an increase in value of asset. Another key point will be that the impacts of climate change will obviously devalue, and it's making sure that that's really well understood. Of course, it's about protecting asset value as well as adding value to it. So again, does anybody want to come back? We know that there is still that anecdotal in terms of actually getting that baseline data on what is the additional value to your property if you do X, Y, Z. Would anyone like Luke, do you want to come back in terms of where we are and in being able to formulate that?
Yeah, and I think just going back to what those comments as well, actually. So I think at the moment there is a green premium, and there's been, like I said, lots of reports showing, from 2% to 15%. I think some were even saying 25%. I think that was more at the time when energy bills were like starting to skyrocket. But really, where we're going to get to at some point is more of a brown discount. So if and what I mean by that is there's going to be many properties which are getting to a C, getting to a B, or new builds at least B or A. And then if your property is more inefficient, there's going to actually be more of a detractor. So I think that's where the green homes will start to become the norm, and then I think we'll start to see a sort of a shifting point a tipping point at that point. Where it's not about green value, it's about defending the value of your property.
Great, thanks, Luke. And I've got a question here, which is: do householders, caveat on that is property owner, occupier, and neighbourhood, need to be defined rather than just owners to better target green financial products? Rach, would you like to come in on that one?
Yeah. No, go either way. She'll have a better answer. She's at natural lender. Go for it.
Yeah.
So I'm presuming there, are we talking around sort of like segmenting, like what we can do in terms of education for first-time buyers as opposed to home movers, and then the different type of properties that actually could we do education based on this customer lives in a 1930s mid-terrace that's old and leaky compared to someone that's in a 1990s detached property. So it's definitely areas that we're looking at as to that it's not a one size fits all, and we need to look at all different areas as to how we help customers. And I think going back to like the question, part of the question is that as lenders we do have, the teams are growing, particularly in the climate risk side. So we have climate scientists who now work within our division, and I think we're the first bank to appoint a head of nature. So all these considerations are being worked on and looked through as to how we can expand it and take it further.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rachel. That's great. I'm mindful of time. We have 5 minutes before we'll be ending. There's a few other questions that I would like to ask. We talked, and it's picking up actually, Rachel, back to that focus. We know the complexity of different housing stock retrofit, and actually thinking about, we know Lloyds Bank Group is supporting in terms of new as well as old housing stock. Thinking about that complexity around retrofitting old stock, how are homeowners being supported across the marketplace?
I think that the starting point, it's around the education, and that's where we've got to start. And we're thinking about how we can help the market understand about sustainable homes and retrofit. So we're a leader in this field. We're supporting brokers through the journey, and we've started early. So we do have a formal accredited CPD module on our website for EPCs, and we've got the partnerships with the likes of the Energy Savings Trust so that we can develop tools to support customers, as I mentioned in my video. And it's things like the partnerships with and collaborating with other major players in the industry, because it's not about doing it on its own, it's about doing it together. And it's all about making it easier for the customer with a full end-to-end journey, and with companies that customers can trust. And a big piece is signposting things like the grants that are available for customers, such as the Great British Installation Scheme, which is for free or reduced installation, or the Boiler Upgrade Scheme, which is like £7,500 for a heat pump, like just to name a few. But it's signposting so customers know exactly where they can go to get that help.
Brilliant, and that does actually lead nicely back to Luke and Will. If we go back to obviously the Green Val tool in particular, and how actually that is addressing some of those critical issues on a house by house basis and being able to surface the opportunities. Would you like to come back in terms of how that's actually working?
Yeah, I'll jump in first if that's okay, Luke, because the Green Val tool is fantastic. But I mean, my sort of blue sky thinking, and I know that certain apps and websites will give you running costs currently and they'll tell you the current EPC. But for me, it should be as soon as a property address is entered into a mortgage fact find, for example, the customer is just given all the information that they need in terms of the current energy efficiency, the current cost, running costs, the return on investment we said in terms of if you do those improvements, what the potential value could be. So it's more about, for brokers, it's a difficult job enough navigating the market and knowing all the ins and outs of lenders' policy and criteria. We should empower customers, and it goes back to the point around segregating whether it's a first-time buyer or remortgage, etc. That information we'd have as part of a fact find, so we could make that information absolutely relevant to the customer and the property that they're actually buying. So hopefully that tees you up quite nicely, Luke, for the Green Val tool and what it currently does.
Yeah, indeed. I think it will help people to engage their customers much more streamlined, because it's a very simple system which takes them through a report, less clicks, and more on basically direct quotes from suppliers as well. So we've tested this with many customers and it seems to be working quite nicely. We get lots of engagement and decent conversion, particularly before the Rishi Sunak U-turn from landlords as well. But I do think it is 2024 is where this stuff starts to ramp up, and 2025 is where I think there's going to be a lot of takeoff within the green mortgage world and the need for these sorts of tools.
Brilliant. Thank you, Luke, and a really great ending. We are now going to conclude. I wanted to confirm that a full version of the webinar, including all of the videos, will be shared after the live broadcast. We appreciate there were some video listening issues. But also, most importantly, thank you so much to our panel. It's been a really great discussion. And we wanted to flag that we have another Green Homes webinar from Propflo that's going to be on Friday, the 22nd of March, 11:30 till 12:30. The core topic we're going to be talking about is how can brokers engage property owners in energy efficiency. So building on today's discussion, please do join us. But thank you very much for listening, and we really hope that you come and join us again. Thank you.